Beginnings in England. In 1747, Jane Wardley of Manchester, in the northwest of England, began to have visions from God, ordering her to preach to the people of Manchester that the second coming of Christ was nigh, with a twist, though, that Christ would return as a woman. Among her first converts were her husband and a wealthy bricklayer. The trio found success and converts among the area's Anglicans and Methodists. Mother Jane Wardley often began her worship in a manner familiar to the Quakers, with silent meditation. As the sessions carried on, the worship would lose its Quaker qualities and be more familiar to modern Pentecostals, as Mother Jane would begin to shake, rattle, and roll while receiving visions from God. Soon the rest of Mother Jane's flock would also begin to receive visions from God, and would likewise shake, shout, sing, and dance around, earning them the moniker the Shaking Quakers, which was shortened to just Shakers. Anne Lee joined these Shaking Quakers in 1758. The Wardleys soon came to believe that Anne was the second coming of Christ that they were waiting for, and she received the title of Mother, succeeding Mother Jane upon her death. Mother Anne brought a defining characteristic to Shakerism: celibacy. Anne, throughout her life, was deeply conflicted about her sexuality, and when she was forced to marry a man named Abraham Standrin in 1761, this was worsened by the deaths of all four of their children in infancy. In 1774, Mother Anne led a small group of Shakers to the province of New York, renting land from the manor of the Van Rensselaer family of Albany, founding Waterlivet, present-day Colony, New York, the first of many Shaker intentional communities. From here, Mother Anne set in stone the doctrines of the Shakers: celibacy, pacifism, and equality between the sexes. Foundation in America. Soon thereafter, in 1776, the Quaker-based inability to swear oaths saw the Shakers imprisoned by colonial authorities. This imprisonment garnered them sympathy and converts among the locals. Using Waterlivet as a base, Mother Anne and her Shakers traveled throughout the eastern colonies as they fought to become states, preaching their message of Mother Anne as the second coming of Christ and her interpretation of the gospel. This evangelizing mission was by all accounts a success, and 18 Shaker communities were organized in the early 1780s. However, these missions were not without danger for the Quaker-based religion as they ventured into the strongly Puritan Massachusetts. In 1784, at Shirley, a town in Middlesex County, Massachusetts, Mother Anne and her brother were attacked by a mob and both badly injured. William would succumb to his injuries on July 18th, and Mother Anne a few months later on September 8th. New leaders. Upon Mother Anne's death, the leadership of the Shakers fell to Joseph Meekum, a convert and former New Light Baptist minister from Enfield, Connecticut. Despite the loss of Mother Anne, the second coming of Christ, the Shakers continued to grow and evolve. Under the stewardship of Father Joseph, the Shakers established their new headquarters 30 miles east at New Lebanon on the New York-Massachusetts border. Father Joseph emphasized the communal lifestyle of the Shakers as being necessary to actually be a Shaker. During these years, the Shakers developed the written covenant. A new Shaker, upon signing the covenant, would confess their sins, submit their property and labor to the commune, and annul, in the eyes of the Shakers at least, any previous marriages in favor of celibacy. A few refused to have their marriages broken up, especially when whole families would join the Shakers. In these instances, the converts were forbade from living with the others. Those living in non-communal orders, such as married couples, were seen by the communal Shakers to be less perfect. Father Joseph died in 1796 and was succeeded by Mother Lucy Wright. Under his tenure, 8 Shaker communities were organized, including one in Shirley, Massachusetts. Lucy Wright was born in 1760 at Pontotoc Plantation, which the next year became Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and converted with her husband, Elizur Goodrich, and 20 members of his extended family. Lucy and Elizur married in 1779 and converted a few months later in 1780, joining fully and annulling their marriage, Lucy returning to her maiden name and Elizur becoming an itinerant preacher for the Shakers. Mother Wright would preside over the beginning of the Shaker Golden Age, called the Age of Manifestations, as well as the westward and southward expansion of Shakerism during the Second Great Awakening. Mother Wright was an able administrator, standardizing and increasing published works for both Shakers and potential converts. Mother Wright preached a doctrine of unity among the Shakers, keeping them together and growing despite Shaker celibacy and the fervors of new Christian sects. While the Shakers had entered Ohio and Kentucky in 1801 and 1803, it wasn't until the spring of 1805 Benjamin Youngs and two Shaker companions held the first Shaker ceremony in the cabin of James Beadle. This mission was held at Lebanon, Ohio, and was the first of its kind west of the Allegheny Mountains. Mother Wright introduced new hymns and dances to Shaker services and worked together with Benjamin Youngs as he wrote The Testimony of Christ's Second Appearing, containing a general statement of all things pertaining to the faith and practice of the Church of God in this latter day, a book of Shaker theology. After Young's Ohio mission, other Shakers began entering the backcountry to set up Shaker communes, creating 5 Shaker settlements under Mother Wright's guidance. These communes include the westernmost settlement of West Union, in the present day 15 miles north of Knox County, Indiana's seat of Vincennes. Mother Wright died in 1821, passing leadership to a small centralized council of ministry elders and eldresses, with authority over all the decentralized Shaker communities and their respective leadership. This system exists still, with among the final Shakers being Elder Arnold Hadd and Eldress June Carpenter. Era of Manifestations. From the late 1830s to right before the American Civil War, Shaker culture flourished. The Shakers today are more known for their innovations in furniture style, all of which developed in this period. Shaker furniture was designed and built with the core philosophy of simplicity, utility, and honesty. Shaker-built furniture remain valuable pieces, while modern imitation Shaker-style furnishings are usually worthless. The Shaker building ways also extend to buildings of all kinds, from outhouses to meeting houses, tools both traditional and newfangled, as well as textiles, some of which are displayed in art museums across America. Shaker innovations were broad. Beyond just furniture construction methods, the Shakers innovated in machinery, business practices, medicine, and agriculture. During this time, the Shakers were famous for their medicinal herbs and gained further fame from the success of the Shaker Seed Company, which employed innovations such as packaging, distributing, and cataloging of seeds for common garden vegetables. To this day, the paper envelopes of seeds you find in spring at any hardware or garden store are practically identical to the paper envelopes developed by the Shakers. Other innovations include early horse-drawn cultivators, early adoption of the circular saw, flat brooms, and early innovations in washing machines with 2 patents for a wash mill and a later improved washing machine. This leads to another Shaker particularity: the depth and breadth of Shaker health and sanitation. In Shaker communities, clothes and bedding were changed and washed frequently, and Shakers bathed regularly. The Shakers also ate simple meals with fresh ingredients and heavily moderated any overindulgence in alcohol and tobacco. Workplace safety was also prioritized in Shaker society, and jobs were rotated frequently to prevent boredom and ensure more than one person knew what they were doing at a particular job. These health innovations extended beyond sanitation and diet. In 1812, the Shakers of New Lebanon founded an order of physicians and nurses. If a Shaker did get sick, they would be tended to with the best possible care at the time. Healthcare for the wider populace in the 19th century was at best abysmal and at worst horrifying. The Shakers had wheeled beds that the head and foot could independently raise and lower, sturdy 4-footed canes, walkers, wheelchairs, and adult-sized cradles for the terminally ill. The Shaker fascination with plant medicine as well evolved with medical science into a form more similar to medicine from 100 years later. Another innovation Shakers were ahead of the curve on was the implementation of the round barn. While George Washington was the first to implement the concept with his 16-sided threshing barn built in 1798 at his Dug Run farm, the first true circular barn was constructed by the Shakers of Hancock, Massachusetts in 1826. The Shaker design did not enter popular use until the 1880s, when agricultural colleges recognized the efficiency of the design. Round barns were the most popular type in America until 1920, when mechanized agriculture was found to be more suited to square barns. In this period, the shaking, visions, and speaking in tongues intensified. The rules and laws of the Shakers became stricter based on these visions, with an eye towards chasing out those in the community that they found to be impure and reinforcing Shaker unity in these changing times. In 1841, on the vision of a child who said they visited Mother Ann in a city in the spirit realm, the council banned pork, tea, and coffee, causing strife among even the most faithful. Many such revelations led to further restrictions, slowly contributing to the erosion of Shaker conversions. The Civil War and Industrialization. During the U.S. Civil War, the Shaker communities around the border areas of the Union and Confederacy were neutral, despite their feelings towards slavery and their Union leanings. The Shakers were among the first active abolitionists, mandating all Southern converts free their slaves and purchasing or working to otherwise free black believers from their masters. The many communes of the Shakers also welcomed fleeing slaves as a stop on the Underground Railroad. Wounded soldiers from both sides who found their way to a Shaker commune were cared for equally. Shakers joined other absolute pacifist sects like the Quakers and the German-speaking Church of the Brethren, Mennonites, and Amish in conscientious objection, though the Quaker oath-swearing problem did see two Shakers of the South Union Kentucky Commune arrested for refusing to swear an oath of allegiance to the United States as they were formerly in Confederate territory, on penalty of being drafted. A petition by the South Union Shakers reached President Lincoln, and on December 30th, 1863, Secretary of War Edwin Stanton ordered the Provost Marshal of Bowling Green to release the Shakers. Lincoln and the Shakers maintained a good relationship, Lincoln writing a thank you letter to the Shakers for one of their rocking chairs, and the Shakers inviting Lincoln to rest and recover at Mount Lebanon merely a month before his assassination. The Shaker communes were economically based off handcrafted items. While the Shakers did not shun innovation, quite the opposite, the northern industrial economy was simply too efficient for the Shakers to keep up, especially in an era of declining membership. The Shakers reached their height in 1840, plateaued through the war years, and began to slowly fall afterwards, at which point the Shaker population began to age out at a rate higher than they could convert. Though the Shakers were among the healthiest people in America at the time, old people simply cannot do the same work young people can. A factor affecting Shaker conversion was the Third Great Awakening. Starting roughly before the start of the Civil War and lasting until the Great Depression, the Third Great Awakening saw an upsurge in mainline Protestant denominations. The rise of sleek new Christian sects such as Christian Scientists, Jehovah's Witnesses, and the Pentecostals, the latter of which would take the ecstatic worship concept to new heights and outshake the aging Shakers. In this age, aspects of Eastern mysticism and faith concepts would enter into vogue among the educated classes, as well as the continental European philosophies of the Enlightenment, laying the groundwork for our postmodern secular world. By 1920, only 12 Shaker communities were left, and in 1957, the three leading eldresses of Canterbury, New Hampshire, closed the Covenant Book, a symbolic closing up of shop for the sect. In the 1980s, a few people had joined the Shakers at Sabbath Day Lake in Maine, but the book was not reopened. Eldress Bertha Lindsay affirmed the choice of her elders, stating, "To become a Shaker, you have to sign a legal document taking the necessary vows, and that document, the official covenant, is locked up in our safe. Membership is closed forever. That said, the living make the rules, and as the last active Shaker community is the Sabbath Day Lake Village, the covenant has been reopened and the Shakers are once again accepting converts. While the celibacy will always leave the possibility open that the Shakers will disappear, New Age ideals of back to nature, simple living, and desire for real work among the younger generations may see a Shaker revival.